Silence. Stop what you're doing and listen. My name is Marcus Hayes, 52 years old, 28 years of service as Chief Paramedic for Cascade County, Oregon. 6,432 emergency calls answered throughout my career. I memorized that number because each of those calls meant that someone, somewhere, was having the worst day of their life. You three are the new recruits who arrived this week, right? I see it in your eyes. That mixture of excitement and nervousness. You think you know what you're going to find out there on the roads. You think it's just blood, broken bones, overdoses, heart attacks, things you learn in school, things that are in the manuals. Let me tell you something no textbook will teach you. There's a reason why the paramedic turnover rate in our region is 63% in the first 2 years. And it's not because of the blood. It's not because of the long hours or the bad pay. It's because of the calls you just can't explain. The calls that make you question whether reality works the way you always thought it did. Look out the window. Do you see that darkness out there? Highway 97 stretching like a black snake through the forests. It's 3:15 a.m. on a Wednesday. There's no moonlight tonight, no cars, just miles and miles of empty asphalt, dense forest on either side, and the occasional abandoned gas station or rest area that no one uses anymore. It's on these roads, in those dead hours of the night, that things happen. The things that make experienced paramedics request transfers. The things that make veteran police officers refuse to cover certain stretches. The things that appear in official reports as nothing found or false alarm because nobody believes what we actually saw. Is the coffee hot? Good, you'll need it. It's calm tonight. Too calm, if you ask me. And when nights get like this, quiet and heavy, that's when I like to tell stories. Not to scare you, but to prepare you. Because sooner or later, if you stay at this job long enough, you're going to get a call like this. Throughout my career, I've had 3 calls that completely changed my perception of the world. 3 nights I answered 911 and encountered things that shouldn't exist. And today, during this seemingly quiet shift, I'm going to tell you those 3 stories. Don't interrupt me. Don't ask questions yet. Just listen. In the end, you'll understand why some of us veterans look at these empty roads with a mixture of respect and terror. The first story happened 13 years ago in October 2012. Story 1. The woman from Highway 97. October 2012. I remember perfectly because it was my youngest daughter Emma's birthday. She had turned 5 that day, and I had missed the party because I was covering the night shift. My wife was furious with me. It wasn't the first time and certainly wouldn't be the last. This job takes its toll on relationships, but you'll soon find out. I was working with Tommy Chen that night. Good guy. Tommy, second-generation Chinese-American, grew up in Portland, always with a quirky sense of humor even in the worst situations. He retired last year and moved to Arizona. I don't blame him. After what happened that night and on a few other occasions, he earned the right to seek a sunny and quiet place. We were driving along Highway 97, that endless road that cuts across Oregon from north to south like a scar. During the day, you get some movement, trucks, tourists, local traffic. But at night, especially after midnight, the highway transforms into something else. It becomes empty, silent. The only sounds are the hum of the ambulance engine, the occasional squeal of some animal in the woods, and the static from the radio. Tommy was driving that night. I was in the passenger seat, half asleep, thinking about Emma opening her presents without me. The radio was low, just that constant white noise you learn to ignore after years of doing it. And then, at 2:47 a.m., I know the exact time because I looked at the digital clock on the dashboard when the radio crackled. The dispatcher's voice cut through the silence. Unit 23, we have a 10:52 on Highway 97, mile 184, near the Old Pine Rest area. Call reporting a traffic accident with a victim trapped in the wreckage. The caller describes multiple visible injuries. The victim is conscious but unable to exit the vehicle. There are no other units available in the area. You are the closest. I picked up the radio immediately. Unit 23 confirming. What is the estimated time of arrival? And do we have police backup on the way? ETA of 15 minutes at your current speed. The police have been notified but are responding to a domestic incident on the other side of the county. You may be the first on the scene. Tommy was already speeding off, his emergency lights painting the dark forest with flashes of blue and red. Sirens cut through the night. He looked at me. Mile 184, isn't that the area near Old Pine Rest area? I finished, feeling that familiar shiver down my spine. Yes. Marcus, how long has that place been closed? 10 years. Almost 12, I replied, pulling the area map from the glove compartment. Yes, we were still using physical maps in 2012. GPS wasn't as reliable in those remote areas. They closed in 2002 after the disappearances. Tommy was quiet for a moment, focused on the road. Then, were you working here when that happened? I was called in for one of the searches. Claire Morrison was the last to disappear from that area. August 2002. She called 911 reporting car trouble, saying she was stopped in the Old Pine Rest area. When the teams arrived, they found her car locked, purse and cell phone inside, but no sign of her. The search lasted 3 weeks. We searched every inch of that forest. Nothing. And the other two? Tommy asked. A man in 2001, a young couple in 2000. All reported similar problems. Broken down car, stopped at the rest area, asking for help. All disappeared without a trace before the teams arrived. The county decided it was best to close the area. They installed chains at the entrance and put up closed area signs. The highway continued operating, but no one should be using that rest area. The forest blurred past the windows, giant pine trees so tall and dense that they completely blocked any natural light. During the day, you can see a little between the trees. At night, it's like driving through an endless tunnel of darkness. But if it's closed, Tommy said slowly, how did someone have an accident in there? That was the question, wasn't it? And I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The 184-mile marker appeared in the headlights. Tommy started to slow down. We both scanned the road, looking for signs of an accident, debris, tire marks, broken glass, anything. There was nothing. The highway was completely clear. The asphalt glistened slightly with the night's moisture, reflecting our emergency lights in puddles that looked like tiny mirrors. But there was no wrecked car, no debris. There was absolutely nothing but the overgrown entrance to the Old Pine Rest area, marked by rusty chains and a faded sign that read, "Closed area, no entry." Tommy pulled the ambulance over to the side of the road. We left the emergency lights on, painting that whole strange scene with pulses of blue and red light. We sat there for a moment, just watching. "There's nothing here," Tommy finally said. "Dispatcher, this is Unit 23. We've arrived at mile 184. There's no sign of an accident, no vehicles, no victims. Can you confirm the location of the call?" The dispatcher's voice came back, and I could hear the confusion in it. "Unit 23, confirming mile 184, Highway 97. The original call came from a cell phone registered to, let me check, for Claire Morrison. Number is no longer in service, but the call was received. Duration of 43 seconds before the line dropped." I felt my stomach churn. "Repeat that." "The name. Claire Morrison. Do you recognize that name?" Tommy looked at me, his eyes wide even in the semi-darkness of the cabin. We both knew that name. "But dispatcher," my voice came out hoarser than I intended, "Claire Morrison disappeared from this exact location 10 years ago. She's dead, or at least missing." Silence on the other end of the radio. Then, "Unit 23, I don't know what to say. The call came from this number, I have the recording here. A female voice reporting that her car overturned in the rest area, that she was injured and trapped in the vehicle. Can you track the exact location of the cell phone? I asked. More silence. The sound of keys being typed. Then, in a voice that definitely sounded less professional and more frightened, Unit 23, the phone signal is active. It's being transmitted now, and the location is coming from approximately 100 meters from your current position. Inside the closed rest area, Tommy was getting out of the ambulance before I'd even fully processed what the dispatcher had said. I grabbed my high-powered flashlight, one of those police ones, 3,000 lumens, enough to light up an entire house. Tommy grabbed his too, along with the emergency medical kit. "Are we really going to go in there?" he asked, but he was already walking towards the chains. "Someone is asking for help," I replied. It's our job." But even as I was saying this, every fiber of my being was screaming that something was very, very wrong. The chains at the entrance were covered in orange rust, with thick cobwebs connecting them to the rotting wooden posts. But when Tommy touched them, they came loose easily, falling to the ground with a metallic thud, as if someone had already released them and simply repositioned them. And that's when we heard it. A voice, female, weak, coming from within the darkness of the rest area. "Help, please, I'm here, I'm trapped." Tommy pointed his flashlight toward the voice. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing what remained of the old pine rest area. The rest area had once been beautiful. You could still see the remnants, wooden picnic tables, now rotten and covered in thick moss. A small bathroom area, the doors torn off or rusted on their tracks. An old drinking fountain completely overtaken by vines. And everywhere, tall grass growing through the cracks in the asphalt, young trees sprouting where there had once been parking. Nature was reclaiming this place. And fast. "Help!" The voice came again, further on, deeper in the resting area, where the darkness was denser. "Please, don't leave me here. Emergency services!" I shouted, my voice echoing strangely among the trees. "Where are you? Keep talking so we can find you." "My car," the voice replied. And God, there was something wrong with that voice. It sounded distant, not just physically distant, but as if it were coming from very far away in another sense, from another time, perhaps. "My car flipped over. I can't get out." We followed the voice, our flashlight scanning the darkness. Tommy was to my left, I to my right, both of us moving forward slowly. The tall grass reached our knees. I could hear things moving in the vegetation, probably rats or other small animals. At least that's what I told myself. And then I saw red lights flashing among the trees at the back of the rest area. Brake lights. "There!" Tommy pointed with his flashlight. "There's a car!" We ran toward the lights. And yes, there was a car. A dark blue sedan, an old Honda Accord, partially hidden by dense vegetation. But something was wrong. The car wasn't overturned as the voice had described. It was perfectly upright, parked, as if the driver had simply stopped there and gone for a walk. Except the car had clearly been abandoned for years. The entire surface was covered in rust. The windows were fogged with dirt and mold. Vines grew through the bumper and around the flat tires. And yet, impossibly, inexplicably, the brake lights were on, flickering weakly. How?" Tommy began. But the woman's voice interrupted him. "Help, I'm here." The voice was coming from inside the car. I approached the driver's side window, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my own ears. I raised my flashlight. I wiped a patch of dirty glass with the sleeve of my uniform, and then I looked inside. Do you know that moment when your mind simply refuses to accept what your eyes are seeing? When there's a delay of a few seconds between perception and understanding, because what you're seeing is so impossible, so completely out of the natural order of things, that your brain needs time to process it. That's what happened. Inside the car, strapped into her seatbelt, with her hands still on the steering wheel as if she were driving, was a woman. But she wasn't alive. And she hadn't recently died. She had been dead for years, maybe a decade. Her skin was gray and mummified, stretched so thin over the bones of her face that you could see every contour of her skull beneath. Her eyes were sunken and opaque, like dirty marble. Her hair, which must once have been blonde, was falling out in clumps, revealing a stained scalp. Her clothes were rotten, torn, covered in mold, and she was looking directly at me. No, wait, let me be more precise. She wasn't looking when I first looked. Her head was tilted forward, her chin against her chest, but the moment my flashlight illuminated the inside of the car, she slowly raised her head. I heard the bones in his neck crack with the movement, and then that human carcass strapped into the seatbelt stared directly at me through the dirty glass, and he spoke. "It'd be why," that thing said, and its mummified lips moved, cracking, tiny slivers of dead skin falling off. "Why did you take so long?" I couldn't move, literally. My muscles were locked, my brain screaming contradictory commands. Run, help, wake up. This isn't real, this can't be real. I called. The thing continued, and the voice was the same one we'd heard before, that distant voice from somewhere else. I called 911, said I needed help. Why didn't anyone come? "Marcus!" Tommy was pulling me, his hands on my arm. "Marcus, get away from me!" The thing inside the car started to move. Mummified fingers closed around the door handle. I heard that metallic click of the lock being released. The door began to open. Tommy pulled me so hard I almost fell. My flashlight fell from my hand, rolling across the floor, the beam of light spinning wildly. For a second, the light captured the scene. The car door wide open, a mummified figure still strapped into the seatbelt, leaning out, those dead eyes fixed on us, a skeletal hand reaching out. And then we were running, just running, without thinking, like animals. Through the tall grass, stumbling over hidden roots, branches scratching our faces. Behind us, I could hear something. No footsteps, something dragging itself. And that voice, louder now, more desperate. "Don't leave me, please, I've been trapped here for so long." We jumped over the fallen chains, almost falling onto the highway asphalt. Tommy got to the ambulance first, ripping the driver's side door open. I dove into the passenger side, slamming the door shut, locking it with fingers that trembled so violently I could barely grip the handle. Tommy started the engine and stepped on the gas. The tires screeched. The ambulance lurched forward. I looked in the side mirror. At the entrance to the old pine rest area, briefly illuminated by our taillights, there was a figure, standing there, just standing there, watching us leave. And then the darkness swallowed her, and she vanished. Neither Tommy nor I spoke for the first 15 minutes. We just drove further and further away from that area, both of us breathing heavily in shock. Finally, I picked up the radio, my hands still trembling. "Dispatcher, this is Unit 23. We need immediate police backup at Old Pine Rest Area, mile 184, Highway 97. Possible evidence of a crime. Possible human remains at the scene." I didn't mention that the human remains had moved. They had spoken. They had tried to get out of the car. The police arrived 20 minutes later. After an hour of searching, what they found changed everything. The blue sedan was a 2001 Honda Accord, registered to Claire Morrison, 34, a resident of Bend, Oregon. She had been missing since August 2002, and yes, they found human remains inside, still strapped into their seatbelts, exactly as I had seen. The autopsy was quick. Medical examiners concluded that Claire Morrison had died of a sudden heart attack while driving. She managed to park the car before she died. Her body remained in the vehicle for more than 10 years, slowly mummifying in the heat of Oregon summers and freezing in the winters. But that didn't explain several things. It didn't explain how nobody found the car during weeks of intense searching in 2002. It was only 100 meters from the main highway. He couldn't explain how his cell phone, which technicians confirmed had a completely dead battery for years, had made a 911 call that night. It didn't explain why the brake lights were on in a car with a long dead battery, and it definitely didn't explain what I saw, what Tommy and I saw. The dispatcher gave us the recording of the 911 call. I listened to it. It was Claire's voice, no doubt about it. 43 seconds of a terrified woman pleading for help, saying she was trapped, that no one was coming. Please, it's been hours, nobody's coming, please. And then static and the line fell. Tommy requested a transfer 3 days later. The last time I spoke to him was last year. He still has nightmares about those dead eyes staring through the dirty glass. Me, I still cover that highway. I still passed mile 184. The entrance to Old Pine Rest Area has been permanently sealed with concrete. But sometimes, late at night, when my radio is particularly quiet, I swear I hear that voice. Help, I'm trapped, please. And I wonder, how many other Claire Morrisons are out there? How many people have died alone, crying out for help that never came, and somewhere beyond death, are they still waiting, still calling 911, still trapped? This is the first story. You're all pale. That's normal. Take a deep breath. The next one is somehow worse, because at least Claire Morrison was dead when we found her. The things I found on Interstate 90, they weren't exactly dead, nor alive. They were somewhere in between, trapped, trying to escape. And they used people like Tommy and me to do it. Story 2. The passenger of kilometer 666. January 2015, 3 years after the incident with Claire Morrison. I'd been temporarily transferred to Montana to cover a shortage of paramedics during the winter months. Montana is a brutal place in winter, temperatures frequently below 20 degrees C, snowstorms that can leave you blind, roads that turn into sheets of ice. I was working with a new partner named Sarah Mitchell, 26 years old, a recent graduate, full of enthusiasm. She was originally from Texas, so that first winter in Montana was a complete culture shock for her. But she was good, attentive, quick to learn, and kept her cool under pressure. At least she kept her cool until that night. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Sarah had mentioned it was her mother's birthday, and she hadn't been able to call because of her shift. We were covering Interstate 90, which cuts across Montana from east to west. During the summer, it's a busy highway, with tourists heading to Yellowstone National Park. In the winter, especially after midnight, it's a frozen wasteland. The snowstorm had started around 9 o'clock at night. By 11, it was practically a total white. Visibility was maybe 10 meters, if we were lucky. The wind howled so hard you could feel the ambulance shaking. Sarah drove slowly, the chains on the tires making that rhythmic sound of metal against ice. "Marcus, she said, keeping her eyes fixed on the road. "In all your years doing this, have you ever seen a worse storm than this?" "Some," I replied, monitoring the radio. "Montana can be brutal, but you get used to it. The key is to respect the winter here. It doesn't forgive mistakes." As if the universe were listening to me, the radio crackled at that moment. "All units on I-90, we have a 1050 PI on the interstate near the 6666 kilometer marker. Driver reported a collision with a pedestrian. The victim is injured on the shoulder. The driver is in shock, requesting ambulance and police backup." Sarah looked at me, her eyes wide. "Kilometer 666, is that real?" "Unfortunately, yes," I replied, picking up the radio. "Dispatcher, this is Unit 17. We are approximately 15 kilometers east. The estimated time is 20 minutes under these conditions. Confirming kilometer 666, correct?" The dispatcher's voice came back, and something in it caught my attention. She sounded nervous. "Correct. Unit 17, kilometer 666. And be careful there. That stretch has history." "What kind of history?" Sarah asked on the radio. Silence for a moment. Then, Highest number of fatal accidents per kilometer in the state. 47 deaths in the last 20 years on that single kilometer of highway, most during snowstorms. Most at night. Sarah swallowed hard. I saw her hand grip the steering wheel tighter. The Department of Transportation already tried removing the sign. I continued, looking at the storm outside. They replaced it with 665A. Sometime in the early 2000s, people kept calling it kilometer 666 anyway, and the accidents continued, so they gave up and put the original sign back. They say it's the road itself. They say there's something wrong with that particular stretch. Something wrong, like what? Sarah asked, but her voice suggested she didn't really want to know the answer. You'll find out, I replied. We're almost there. The kilometer marker 666 appeared through the snow, briefly illuminated by our headlights. Someone, perhaps several someones over the years, had spray painted over it. Strange symbols, words I didn't recognize, and superimposed on everything in peeling red spray paint. Come back. Welcoming, Sarah murmured. We saw the SUV stopped on the shoulder, its emergency lights flashing, creating intermittent circles of red light in the falling snow. Sarah parked the ambulance behind it. I grabbed my first aid kit while she grabbed hers and an extra flashlight. Outside, the cold was like a physical wall. The wind cut through the thermal uniform as if it were paper. The snow whipped horizontally, tiny ice crystals that stung any exposed skin. A man was standing beside the SUV, in his early 40s, wearing a heavy winter coat, but shivering. And I could see it wasn't just from the cold. He was genuinely terrified. His eyes were wide, his face pale even under the red light of the emergency lights. Thank God, he shouted over the wind. Thank God you're here. I don't know what to do. He's down there on the side of the road, and he's acting so strangely. Calm down, sir, I said, having to shout to be heard. What exactly happened? I was driving, the man said, the words coming out in quick, breathless bursts, and there was nothing on the road. The snow was falling heavily, but I could see and there was nothing. And then, suddenly, he was right here, right in front of me, as if he had materialized. I tried to swerve, but he was so close, and I felt the impact. I heard that horrible sound. Okay, Sarah said, her voice professional despite the cold. Where is the victim now? The man pointed beyond the shoulder of the road, where it descended in a steep, snow-covered incline. He crawled over there. I tried to help him, but he told me not to come near, said he'd already called for help. But how? There's no cell phone signal here. I tried calling and couldn't get through. How did he call? That was a good question, but we didn't have time to ponder it now. If someone was injured down there, possibly bleeding, possibly in shock, and in the current temperatures, every minute counted. Stay here and keep warm, I instructed the driver. We'll take care of it. Sarah and I moved carefully beyond the shoulder of the road, descending the slope. The snow reached our knees in places. Our flashlights cut through the darkness and snow, creating cones of pale white light. And then we saw him. A man who looked to be about 30 years old, was sitting in the snow, leaning against a tree. He was wearing completely inappropriate clothing for the weather, a thin denim jacket, a t-shirt underneath, regular jeans, and ordinary sneakers. No gloves, no hat, no scarf. He should be dead. In that temperature, with that wind, dressed like that, severe hypothermia in less than 10 minutes. Death in less than an hour. And yet, he was sitting there, awake, alert, looking directly at us, smiling. Finally, he said, and his voice was calm, clear, without trembling, as if he were sitting in a warm room instead of in the midst of a deadly snowstorm. I knew you would come. You always come. Sarah and I exchanged glances. Something about this was completely wrong. Sir, I called, approaching cautiously. I'm Paramedic Marcus Hayes. This is my partner, Sarah Mitchell. The driver said he hit you. Are you injured? Did he run me over? The man laughed. A genuine, even cheerful laugh. No, 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 he didn't run me over. I just need a ride, and now you're here to give me one. I was now less than 3 meters from him. I could see his face more clearly. He was pale, not just pale from the cold, but pale in a way that wasn't natural. His skin had a bluish tint, especially around his lips and the tip of his nose, classic signs of advanced hypothermia. But his eyes were bright, alert, totally focused. "Sarah," I said softly, "we're going to need to check your vitals. Possible severe hypothermia." She knelt beside him, pulling out her stethoscope. "Sir, I'm going to check your pulse and temperature, okay?" When she touched her wrist, she froze. Her eyes widened. She looked at me, and I saw real fear in her face. "Marcus," her voice trembled, "there's no pulse, and God, he's cold, completely cold, like a corpse." I immediately went to the other side of the man, checking his pulse on his neck. Sarah was right. There was no pulse, nothing. And the skin under my fingers was hard, stiff, cold as marble. This man was dead. He had all the characteristics of someone who had been dead for hours, maybe days. Rigor mortis begins to set in, body temperature matching the environment, except he was awake, conscious, talking, looking at us. "What?" Sarah began, stepping back. "You need to take me," the man said, and for the first time his voice lost its cheerful tone. It became lower, more urgent, almost pleading. "You need to take me now, before they get here." "Before whoever arrives?" I asked, my hand automatically going to the radio on my belt. We needed backup, police, something. This was way beyond a normal medical call. The man did not respond verbally. He merely slowly raised an arm, and I saw that his fingers were black, the tips of each dark with frostbite, and pointed to the forest behind him. "Them," he whispered. "Under the others, the ones who never got a ride, the ones who are still walking." And then we listened. Footsteps in the snow. Many footsteps. The sound of feet dragging, crushing the snow, coming from the forest, getting closer, but we couldn't see anyone. Our flashlights scanned the line of trees, nothing but dark trunks and falling snow. And yet, the footsteps continued, closer, closer. They come every time someone stops here," the man said, and now there was real dread in his voice. "They come walking from the forest. They try to reach the highway. They try to get into the cars, but they can't. Not alone. They need someone to take them." "Who are they?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Those who died walking. Those who were caught in storms. Those who tried to get help but couldn't. They are still walking. Still trying to reach the highway. Still trying to go home." The sound of footsteps was very close now. I could hear not only the feet in the snow, but breaths. Lots of breaths. Gasping, irregular, desperate. And then we saw figures emerging from the line of trees. 1, 2, 5, 10. My God, there were so many. All wearing clothes unsuitable for winter. All with that same bluish skin. All moving with that shuffling, stiff gait. They were all looking directly at us. "Run!" the man shouted. "Grab me and run!" Sarah and I didn't argue. Our emergency training kicked in. We grabbed the man by the arms. He was so light, absurdly light, as if there were no muscles or organs, just bones and skin, and dragged him back up the slope. The figures sped up. They began to run, but it was a strange, clumsy run, like puppets with poorly tied strings. Their limbs moved at odd angles. "Go, go, go!" I yelled to Sarah. We managed to drag the man back to the side of the road. The SUV driver saw the figures and got into his car, locking the doors, his eyes wide with terror. We threw the man in the back of the ambulance. Sarah jumped in with him. I ran to the steering wheel and started the engine. The figures were almost on the road. I put it in gear and accelerated, the tires spinning on the ice before gaining traction. The ambulance lurched forward. I looked in the rearview mirror. Dozens of figures lay on the road now, standing exactly where we had been, all watching us leave, all leaving only the faintest marks in the snow, as if they weighed nothing. And then the storm swallowed them up, and they disappeared. I drove for at least 5 minutes before I felt comfortable slowing down. My breathing was rapid, my heart pounding against my ribs. Through the rearview mirror, I could see Sarah in the back with the man. "How is he?" I shouted. "Marcus," her voice trembled. He's disappearing." "What?" But even as I was saying this, I could see through the mirror. The man was evaporating, literally. His body was becoming translucent, like smoke, dissipating into thin air. "No!" he cried, and for the first time since we'd found him, he sounded truly desperate. "No! I almost made it! I almost got home. Please!" "What's happening?" Sarah was trying to touch him, but her hands were passing through him now, as if he were made of mist. I just wanted to go home." His voice grew weaker, more distant. "My wife, she's waiting. She doesn't know. Please tell her." And then he disappeared, completely. There was nobody on the stretcher, just his clothes, an old denim jacket, t-shirt, pants, sneakers, all soaked and covered in ice, and a wallet lying on the floor. I pulled the ambulance over to the side of the road. Sarah and I just sat there for a long moment, neither of us saying anything, processing what we had just witnessed. Finally, Sarah picked up her wallet, her hands trembling. She opened it. She pulled out her driver's license. "Michael Reeves," she read aloud. "Age, 28. Address in Billings, Montana. Date of issue of ID card, May 1987. 38 years ago. We investigated later when we returned to base. Michael Reeves had died in January 1987, exactly at kilometer 6666 of I-90. His car had broken down during a snowstorm. He had decided to walk to get help. His body was found 3 days later, frozen, just 200 meters from the highway. The report said he was on his way home. He had called his wife from an emergency number before his cell phone died, saying he would be home in a few hours. She waited for days, for weeks, for months, until they found the body, and she knew he would never come home. Over the next 5 years, police and search and rescue teams found 17 more bodies in that forest near kilometer 666, all victims of snowstorms over decades, all trying to reach the highway, all dying in the process. And apparently, they are all still walking, still trying to catch that ride they never managed to get, trying to finish that journey home that was interrupted by death. Sarah requested a transfer back to Texas 2 weeks later. The last time I spoke to her was 6 months ago. She completely gave up her profession as a paramedic. He works in a flower shop now. He says he wants to spend his days working with living things, things that grow, beautiful things. I understand completely. As for me, I completed my temporary assignment in Montana and returned to Oregon 3 months later. But sometimes, on winter nights, when there's a snowstorm, I close my eyes and I still see those figures emerging from the forest. I still hear those footsteps in the snow. I still see Michael Reeves fading away in the back of the ambulance, desperate to complete that last journey home. And I wonder, how many people are trapped like this? How many are walking endlessly in an eternal loop, trying to reach a destination they will never reach? Okay, take a deep breath, all 3 of you. I know these stories are heavy, but you need one more, the last one. And it's the most recent. It happened just 2 years ago. It's also, by far, the worst. Because this time, it didn't stay on the road. It came with us. Story 3, the MINIVAN family. This last story happened in July 2023, just 2 years ago. It's so recent that sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, with the sound of those children's voices echoing in my head. I was back in Oregon, working with a new partner, James Rodriguez, 35 years old, an Army veteran. He had served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a combat medic before becoming a civilian paramedic. James was the kind of guy you want by your side in any emergency. Calm, competent, he'd seen a lot. Or at least, he thought he'd seen it all. It was a perfect summer night, one of those rare nights when everything seemed peaceful. Clear skies, a full moon, a pleasant temperature. We were on Highway 26, which runs from Portland into the Oregon countryside. During the day it's busy, but at that hour, 3:15 a.m. on a Wednesday, it was practically empty. James was driving, humming softly to a song playing on the radio. I was in the passenger seat, half asleep, thinking that maybe, just maybe, we'd have a quiet night for the first time in weeks. You should know that peaceful nights never last. The radio crackled. All units on Highway 26. We have a suspicious 1057 at mile 92 eastbound. The truck driver reported a silver Honda Odyssey minivan driving erratically. The witness claims to hear children screaming from inside the vehicle. Possible kidnapping, possible medical emergency involving minors. The vehicle did not respond to attempts to contact them via horn. Police units were dispatched, but an ambulance was requested to be on standby in case there are victims. I was fully awake now. Children. The word alone makes any paramedic straighten up in their chair. Children in danger trigger something primal in you. All the protective instincts, all the urgency in the world condensed into a single moment. Under-received, Amar Dispatcher, I replied. Unit 23 is approximately 10 kilometers from mile 92. What is the exact description of the erratic behavior? The truck driver says the vehicle is swerving between lanes, slowing down and accelerating erratically. He says the brake lights are flashing irregularly, and the children... He says he can hear children screaming even with the windows closed in both vehicles. James had already sped up our emergency lights, cutting through the darkness of the highway. That's strange, he said, to hear children through two closed vehicles moving. They'd have to be screaming very loudly. Either something is very wrong, I agreed, checking our equipment. Dispatcher, were you able to track the minivan's license plate? Negative, Unit 23. The license plate is either not visible or is covered. We tried to verify by model and color, but without the plate, it's impossible to identify. ETA of police units, approximately 15 minutes. You'll arrive first. Of course, we would arrive. We always arrive first. Highway 26 stretched out before us, illuminated by the full moon. Trees on either side cast long shadows across the asphalt, and then, perhaps 400 meters ahead, we saw brake lights, a silver minivan, swerving slightly. The taillights flashing erratically, and even from here, even through the window of our ambulance, with the engine running and the radio crackling, we heard the children screaming. My God, James whispered. This isn't normal. They're screaming like they're being murdered. He was right. Those weren't the cries of children playing or crying. They were screams of pure, absolute terror. The kind of sound that freezes your blood and makes every paternal instinct in your body scream to do something, anything, now. Dispatcher, we've confirmed the description of the suspect minivan. I reported, my voice strained. The screams are audible. We need urgent police backup. Unit 23, keep a safe distance. Do not approach until the police arrive. I repeat, do not approach. But then something happened. The minivan began to slow down. The brake lights turned solid red. The vehicle came to a complete stop. It simply stopped there, in the middle of the right lane, blocking part of the highway. James slowed us down, stopping perhaps 50 meters away, while keeping our emergency lights on. What is she doing? He murmured. For a long moment, nothing happened. The minivan simply sat there, stopped, in the middle of the road. The children's screams continued, a sound that pierced the bones. And then, the side door began to slide open. You need to understand one thing about working as a paramedic. You develop instincts. After years of responding to thousands of calls, your subconscious starts picking up patterns, subtle signs of danger. It's like a sixth sense that screams when something is wrong. At that moment, every fiber of my being was screaming, "Danger! Run! Get out of here!" But then we saw the children, 3 of them, stepping out of the minivan's side door. A girl who looked about 6, a boy of maybe 8, and another girl a little older, maybe 10, all wearing pajamas, cartoon prints, light colors, all barefoot, and they were all running towards us. "Help!" the little girl screamed, her voice high-pitched and desperate. "Please help us! She's going to get us!" James was already opening the door. "Marcus, they're children. We need—" "Wait!" I yelled, grabbing his arm. But it was too late. He was out of the ambulance, running towards the children. I watched them through the windshield. The 3 children ran to James, clinging to his legs, their small hands gripping his uniform, crying, sobbing, looking utterly terrified. It seemed completely real children, real terror, but something was wrong. I grabbed my most powerful flashlight and got out of the ambulance, moving more slowly, more cautiously. "Please, please," the boy was saying, the words coming out in gasping sobs. "She's going to take us back. Don't let her take us." "Calm down," James said, his automated medical training voice kicking in. "You're safe now. No one will hurt you. Where are your parents? Who was driving the car?" The 3 children pointed at the minivan at the same time, a perfectly synchronized movement that sent a shiver down my spine. "Mommy!" the older girl whispered. "Our mommy." "Okay," James said, gently trying to untangle their hands from his uniform. "The 3 of you stay here with my partner. I'll talk to your mother, okay? I'll make sure she doesn't hurt you." "No!" the 3 children shouted in unison. Perfect unison, the exact same intonation, like a recording playing from 3 different speakers. James froze. His eyes met mine over the children's heads, and then we heard the driver's side door of the minivan opening. That metallic sound of a car door opening, normally so mundane, so common, sounded like the church bell of destiny on that silent night. "Children," a voice called from the minivan, a female voice. But there was something profoundly wrong with it. It sounded like 2 voices overlapping, a normal human voice and underneath something deeper, more guttural, more other. "Children, get back in the car. It's time for us to go home." Something came out of the minivan. In the first few seconds, my brain tried to convince me that it was a woman. It had the right basic shape, a head, a torso, 2 arms, and 2 legs, wearing what appeared to be a summer dress. But then she straightened up completely, and I realized the proportions were completely wrong. The limbs were far too long, not just a little long, but grotesquely elongated, as if someone had taken a normal human body and stretched it like taffy. The arms hung down almost to the knees, the legs seemed to have extra joints, and the head, God, the head. She was bent at an angle that should have broken her neck. Not just a little, bent almost horizontally, her right ear nearly touching her right shoulder, and yet she was moving, walking, functioning. "Oh my God," James whispered. The thing that looked like a woman started walking toward us, and the way she moved, it was like watching a video in reverse. Her knees bent backward, her elbows bent the wrong way. Every step was an anatomical aberration, and she was smiling. A smile too big for a human face, too wide, with too many teeth, as if someone had cut off the cheeks all the way to the ears and stuffed twice as many teeth into the mouth. "My lovely children," the thing said in that horrible double voice. "Time to go back. Mommy is waiting." The 3 children began to cry hysterically, clinging tightly to James. But now I was close enough to see them clearly in the light of my flashlight, and I noticed something. They weren't crying tears. Their cheeks were dry. The sobs were perfectly rhythmic, mechanical, like a machine imitating human emotion. And when the older girl looked up, for just a second, I saw her eyes, completely black. No white, no iris, just solid darkness. "James," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "James, let them go. Now." But he wasn't listening to me. He was focused on the thing approaching the minivan, instinctively positioning itself between it and the children. Full protective mode. "Mom," he called, keeping his voice steady. "I need you to stop right there. I'm a paramedic. These children are under my protection right now. If there's a family problem here, we can involve Child Protective Services. But they're not coming back with you until—" The thing laughed. It was the most horrible sound I've ever heard in my life, like glass breaking mixed with fingernails on a chalkboard mixed with someone choking. "Protection," she said, and her head tilted to the other side with an audible snap. "You can't protect them from me, paramedic. They're mine. They've been mine from the start." "James," I yelled, "get back in the ambulance now." Finally, he heard something in my voice that reached him. He grabbed the children, two under one arm, one clinging to his chest, and started running back to the ambulance. Things sped up. Impossible. It shouldn't be possible. But she went from a slow walk to a full sprint in less than a second. And she didn't run normally. She ran on all fours, those overly long limbs banging against the asphalt, her head bobbing at that impossible angle, that wide smile still fixed on her face. "Get in the car," I yelled, already running to the driver's side. James threw the children into the back of the ambulance and dove into the passenger seat. I started the engine, put it in reverse, and stepped on the gas. The ambulance lurched backward, its tires screeching. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The thing was running after us, running fast, faster than any human could. Those impossible limbs stretching and contracting, propelling it forward at a speed that defied physics. "She's winning!" James shouted. I was reversing the ambulance at over 80 kilometers per hour, frantically looking in the mirrors, praying not to hit anything. The thing was maybe 20 meters away, 15, 10. Those hands, too long, reaching out, fingers that seemed to have too many joints, reaching the back of the ambulance. And then she simply stopped. She froze in the middle of the highway, illuminated by our taillights. She stayed there, that impossible tilted head, that horrible smile, those arms dangling, and it didn't move anymore. Why did she stop? James gasped, his breath quickening. We stood there in silence, both of us staring at the thing in the rearview mirror, waiting for it to move again. But it just stayed there, perfectly still. And then, from behind us, from the children in the back, came a voice. But it wasn't the crying child's voice from before. It was that same double voice that the thing on the road had used. "Because," the voice said, and it was like ice running down my spine. We're already inside. James and I turned at the same time. The three children were sitting perfectly still in the back seats. Their backs were perfectly straight. Their hands were neatly folded in their laps. And their heads, all three at the same time, began to tilt, slowly. That same impossible angle, ear to shoulder, more and more. The sound of bones and cartilage cracking filled the ambulance, until their heads were tilted at the exact same angle as the thing in the road. Three smiles began to spread across their faces, growing larger, wider, the skin of their cheeks tearing at the edges to accommodate smiles too big for human faces. Teeth showing, too many teeth, in irregular rows, pointed. "Thank you for the ride. Paramedics," the three said in perfect unison. "It's so hard to travel alone at night, so hard to find adequate transportation." James made a sound. He couldn't form words. A scream caught in his throat that came out as a strangled groan. He ripped his door open while I was still braking, throwing himself from the moving ambulance. I braked hard. The ambulance spun, its tires smoking. James was on the road, crawling, trying to get away. I looked in the rearview mirror. The three children, the three things that looked like children, were calmly exiting through the back door, moving with that same awkward gait, their joints bending in the wrong directions. And walking towards them, from where we had come, was the larger figure, the mother, also walking calmly now. I ran outside and dragged James away from the ambulance. We stood there, the two of us on the side of the highway, watching. The four figures met in the middle of the road, perhaps 30 meters from us, perfectly illuminated by the full moon and the still flashing emergency lights of the ambulance. And then they began to merge. There is no other word for it. The bodies began to flow into one another, like melting wax, like mixing water. Limbs fusing together, torsos combining, heads merging into a single, pulsating mass. The resulting thing grew. It got bigger. The shape changed, transforming into something my brain simply refused to fully process. As if looking directly at it caused physical pain behind my eyes. And then, as quickly as it began, it stopped. The thing, now perhaps 3 meters tall, with too many limbs growing from the wrong places, stared at us. It had multiple eyes now, scattered across what could vaguely be called a face. All eyes blinked at the same time, and then he disappeared. He didn't move away. He didn't run. He simply ceased to exist. The minivan, too, the clothes the children were wearing, everything. He vanished instantly, as if he had never been there. All that remained was an empty road, bathed in moonlight. James and I stood there for, I don't know how long. It could have been 2 minutes or 20. Time didn't seem to work properly. Finally, the sirens caught up with us. 3 police cars, lights flashing. They found nothing, of course. No minivan, no evidence that a vehicle had been there. Our ambulance cameras captured everything, the whole horrific sequence, but when the police tried to play back the recordings, they were corrupted. Just static and occasional flashes of images that made people look away quickly, complaining of sudden headaches. Federal agents showed up the next day, men in suits who didn't give names, just showed credentials we couldn't quite read before disappearing back into pockets. They confiscated all the recordings. They made James and me sign non-disclosure agreements so dense it took an hour to read. They said it was a matter of national security, that there were phenomena that couldn't be explained to the public, that some things were better left unrecorded. James never went back to work. He called for medical leave the next day, and 3 months later, I received a postcard from rural North Carolina. It simply said, I moved to a place with no highways, no main roads, nothing but dirt roads and people I know. Never again, Marcus, never again. I don't judge him. I truly don't judge him. I did my research, and of course, because that's what you do when you witness something impossible, you look for patterns, for precedents, for any shred of sanity that might make sense of it. And I found things. Over the course of 50 years, there have been 17 official reports of a silver minivan with screaming children on that same stretch of Highway 26, always between 2 and 4 in the morning, always resulting in nothing found. Always leaving paramedics, police officers, or random drivers completely traumatized. But there was more. Unofficial reports, stories whispered among first responders after a few beers, when defenses are down, stories of other things, hitching rides, things that seem human until you look very closely, things that try to get into emergency vehicles because, well, nobody knows why. Maybe because we're obligated to respond. Thank you for helping. Maybe that makes us vulnerable in ways other people aren't. There's a retired paramedic in Seattle who swears he picked up an accident victim who turned to him halfway to the hospital and said, "Thank you for letting me in. It's been so long since I've had a body to use." He dropped him off the next day. A police officer in Nevada responded to a lost child on the highway. The child held her hand and said, "You have a daughter, don't you? She looks delicious. Can I visit her?" She went on psychiatric leave and never returned. A firefighter in Arizona found a man trapped in an overturned car. The man said, "We're like you, you know. We get trapped. We can't get out on our own. We need help. We need someone to invite us inside." The firefighter refused to touch him. He waited for backup. When they returned, there was no car. There was no man. There are things out there, on the empty roads of America. Things that get stuck, not physically, but in another way. stuck between between states, between realities, between life and death. I don't know. Nobody knows. But they need an invitation. They need to be taken. They need someone to put them in a vehicle, to transport them, to unknowingly carry them through whatever barrier keeps them contained. And who do you call when you need help on the road? Who do you know will come, no matter what? Who is trained, obligated, compelled to respond to calls for help? Paramedics, police officers, firefighters, first responders, us. We are the vehicle. We are the breach. So that's it. 3 calls. 3 nights I answered 911 calls and encountered things that shouldn't exist. Claire Morrison, dead for 10 years but still calling for help, still trapped in her car, still waiting for help that arrived too late. Michael Reeves and the dozens of other frozen corpses, still walking through the forest, still trying to reach that highway, still waiting for that ride home. And the MINIVAN family, if it was a family, if it was ever real, trying to use James and me as a gateway to our world, somewhere else. I don't know. And thank God I never found out. You 3 are looking at me now as if I'm crazy. I see it in your eyes. You think these are stories, exaggerated warnings to scare off newbies. Maybe you think I'm trying to test you, to see if you'll get scared and give up. I don't blame you. I would have thought the same before, but I'll tell you something. And I want you to remember this very deeply. This job, being a paramedic, especially on these remote highways, in these dead hours of the night, it's not just about saving lives. Sometimes it's about recognizing when something isn't a life to be saved. When something is a trap, when that cry for help isn't coming from a human being, but from something pretending to be one. Listen to your instincts. If something seems wrong, if the skin is too cold, if the eyes don't reflect light correctly, if the movements are just a little off, trust them, call for backup, wait. Don't approach alone. And if one day you receive a call that seems impossible, a woman asking for help from a place that's been locked up for years, a man in a snowstorm, inappropriately dressed, perfectly calm, a family in danger that makes every instinct in you scream to run. Remember these stories. Remember that not everyone who calls 911 is human. Remember that not everything that cries out for help needs to be saved. And above all, remember, some doors should not be opened. Some people should not be given rides. Some requests for help should go unanswered. Because the consequences of helping the wrong thing, well, you saw what happened to Tommy, to Sarah, to James, and to me. Look at me, really look. See the dark circles under my eyes, the occasional tremor in my hands, the way I compulsively check my rearview mirrors, even when I'm not driving, the way I can no longer sleep without all the lights on. This is what 28 years of answering calls does to you. And this is before you encounter the things that shouldn't exist. So yes, you're going to have long nights. You're going to see things that will hurt you emotionally. You're going to lose patience you wish you could have saved. That's part of the job. But if one day, on some dark and silent night, you receive a call that makes your skin crawl, that makes that primal voice deep in your brain scream danger, trust me on this. And maybe, just maybe, they'll say the nearest unit is too far away, that another paramedic needs to respond, that they can't make it. Because sometimes the life you save could be your own. Okay, I've said too much already. It's 3:47 a.m. We still have more than 4 hours of our shift left. Hopefully, things will calm down and you won't need to use anything I told you tonight. But if the radio crackles, if a call comes from a place that makes you hesitate, well, now you know. Now you have been warned. Welcome to the profession, newbies. I sincerely hope you never need to use these lessons. But something tells me that at least one of you will. Sooner or later, these roads will take their toll on all of us. Stay alert, stay safe. And what if you see a silver minivan with screaming children? Just drive. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just drive.